History Month. Today we have several women from the Young Adult Leadership Council from the National Center for Learning Disabilities. And we're going to be talking about our experiences being learning disabled women and how that has impacted our experiences. My name is Rochelle Johnson. I have dyslexia and ADHD, and I am a psychology PhD student studying learning disabilities.
Hi, I'm Athena Hallberg. I'm a grad student at the Harris School of Public Policy at the University of Chicago, and I have dyslexia, mild auditory processing delay, and dysgraphia.
I'm Bridget Silver. I am a senior at Mercer University, and in the fall, I'll be starting my PhD in school psychology at the University of Georgia, and I have dyslexia.
Hi, I'm Josephine Olson. I'm a senior at Boston University. I'm studying American Studies and minoring in Deaf Studies or American Sign Language, and I'm planning to go to law school. And my learning disability is that I'm dyslexic with a working memory deficiency.
I'm Lizzie Arnold. I have ADHD and auditory processing disorder. I am a sophomore at Coastal Carolina University, studying to be an actor and a playwright.
Okay, thank you all. So we're going to go over some questions. So the first question is, what is your experience with the discrepancy in the ratio of women to men with LD, and how has that affected you?
So for me personally, I know that boys are much more likely to get a psychological evaluation than girls, simply because of how their behaviors present in the classroom. Boys are more likely to act out, speak out of term, and be a little more hyperactive than girls, as to where they tend to be more shy and quiet and not outright express their learning disabilities in a way a teacher might think. And I really believe that the way to combat this is to train teachers in how to spot the signs in both genders.
I'd say for me, growing up, I just saw the difference of like seeing how boys were like more hyperactive, that were learning disabled, and girls that tended to like be more inattentive. I remember as a child noticing how the classroom and just the atmosphere and the teacher would just like go and meet the needs of those hyperactive boys, but then as a girl getting ignored, and those effects still are with me, and I know so many other women. I feel like I always have to have my life put together. I always have to be responsible, and I can't make any mistakes, because if I do, my entire world could fall apart. Nobody could rely on me. I would be called stupid or lazy, which I have multiple times, like throughout my education and just society. I've been labeled that way just as a woman. And because of that, I constantly feel the pressure of like masking like little things I do, like my little tics, or like staring in space, because I feel the need to present as this woman that's socially like acceptable, and it takes a toll on my mental health.
Yeah, so for me, I was really lucky in that I was diagnosed in kindergarten and went to an LD school, but that meant that I was, for pretty much all of elementary school, either the only girl in my class or the second only girl in my class. And that meant that I didn't have female friends as a little kid. And that also meant that I was a little socially isolated. You know, I wasn't invited to like the boys' only birthday party that everyone else in my class got to go to. And even when there was another girl in my class, you know, she kind of resented me for being too feminine, for not fitting in, for playing with dolls and liking dresses. And, you know, it meant that I was doubly isolated.
People tend to be surprised when I say that I'm a girl with dyslexia, because there's a stereotype that dyslexia mainly affects boys, because girls tend to hide their disability by being more quiet and kind of reserved, while a lot of boys, when they have difficulty reading, are more loud and they act out. And so a lot less girls are identified with dyslexia. And so it was definitely hard for me when I was younger, especially, to really feel like I belonged to this group of people that have dyslexia. And I really hope that this changes and the stereotype no longer continues.
So how has the presence of learning disabilities and women's stereotypes affected you all?
For me, I feel like my idea and my experience was a bit different. I was diagnosed when I was 5 with ADHD and auditory processing disorder, and I have the combined type of ADHD. But as a child, I was very hyperactive, would run around in the classroom, would break things, would talk, and I didn't have much control over impulse. And I just noticed the difference between me as a girl having those symptoms versus a boy, and the teachers being more accommodating to the boys. But to me, it was shut up and be quiet and do as you're told and don't ask questions and just get through education and survive. And that mentality has carried with me to this day. I'd say now as an adult, I present a lot more inattentively, and I internalize a lot of the shame and I guess just the emotions that have come with emotional trauma, educational, societal drama that has come with having learning disabilities and being a woman. I've just buried it down into a bottle and I've tried to forget about it, but it affects people in everyday lives, in their relationships and their work, their attention. I noticed for me, I tend to emotionally withdraw when things get too much for me to process. And it's a very unhealthy coping strategy, but I think it's one that a lot of women have. Where it's that same mentality of just trying to survive and make it and be respected along with men. But we often don't get that.
For me, I wanted to first give an example of how stereotypes for both women and LD individuals can intersect. When I was first diagnosed, I was told that I would never succeed in academics, to really not really pursue those. And there was this statement said to my mother where someone said to her, "Oh, it's fine. She's pretty and blonde. She'll marry well." And I think that exemplifies how these stereotypes can intersect within this community of LD women. And I wanted to go over specifically 2 stereotypes that have impacted me. The first one is, as a child, I was very self-conscious of my handwriting and reading. And there's this stereotype, especially of elementary aged girls, that they're really good at and they really like reading and English and handwriting and calligraphy, kind of these more soft feminine interests. And I just wasn't good at those. And I became really self-conscious. And while I claim to be pretty proud of being LD, it is probably one of those few things that I still am self-conscious of today, is my handwriting abilities, because of the expectation that women are good at handwriting. And throughout my life, I felt very almost like I was failing as a girl because I didn't have this cute handwriting. I remember practicing bubble letters in 4th grade because I wanted to have the cute handwriting like all the other girls, and I just couldn't do it. And honestly, this stereotype continues to affect me today. My entire life, anytime I've been in a group project, either that be for school or work, without fail, a guy will hand me the pen and say, "You're a girl, you do the note-taking, you write the stuff on the board." And immediately my thought is, there's no way that I have the best handwriting. Because I'm dyslexic, I barely can read my own handwriting. And as a kid, that was really upsetting in that, I felt self-conscious of the fact that I wasn't fulfilling my role as a woman in being the note taker. But now it's more upsetting as a woman of the assumption that I would be the good one with good handwriting should take the notes. And it's interesting to have seen how that same stereotype is affecting me, both in the same situation, but my reaction to them is different. The other stereotype I wanted to talk about is this idea of expected failure from women, both women and those with LD. And so that's a stereotype where the first one I talked about are dissecting, where the stereotype for each LD and women is different. But with this one, they kind of coincide, where as a woman or someone with LD, you're expected to fail, especially in areas that require academic related skills. So for me, because of that, and because of, I can face a lot of imposter syndrome and stereotype threat, feeling like for me, there is no option of failure. Because throughout my life, there have been people who doubted me, people who believe that I shouldn't be in the spaces that I'm in, that I shouldn't be succeeding at the level I am. And when I feel like if I ever fail, I'll prove those people right. And it adds this extra pressure of, if I ever fail, I've failed completely, and I'll prove everyone right. And that adds a whole nother level of pressure to LD women.
Yeah, I just briefly wanted to talk about my own experience growing up with, handwriting. And I went to the same school as my younger brother. I, though, was labeled as defective so much sooner than him because of my bad handwriting. And he has so much worse dysgraphia than me. But because I was a girl, I was labeled defective. He was seen as social and outgoing, where I was a little bit more quiet and withdrawn. So, I was labeled defective so much sooner, and they tried to kick me out of that school because of a disability that I had no control over.
What has been the presence and impact of having mentors in your life who are LD women?
For me, when I was diagnosed, the only option of career options offered to me, even at 7, was to go be an athlete or in some area of the creative arts, like music. And due to dyslexia and phonological processing difficulties, music was not an option. And sports, it wasn't horrible, but I wasn't going to be the next WNBA star. And so these were the only 2 options presented to me. And I was told that academia was not an area, anything with academic skills. And I didn't really have people around me to look up to who were LD. And the only people I was given to as famous people to look up to were men, only men, and men who were athletes or actors. And while that's great to have men like Michael Phelps or Daniel Radcliffe to look up to, it wasn't what I wanted to do. It didn't help me in feeling inspired that I could do what I wanted to do when those were the only options presented to me. And when we first started, at the start of Women's History Month this March, LD or NCLD reached out to us and asked if we would be interested in writing a blog each on famous women with learning disabilities who inspire us. And I read that email and I thought about it. And honestly, I couldn't think of one famous woman with an LD to write about. And quite honestly, I was embarrassed at that thought and shocked. I consider myself to be highly knowledgeable in LD activism and who's in those spaces. And so I quickly ran to Google and was like, I must have slipped my mind. And so I Googled LD famous learning disabled women, and a list of 15 men who were all actors or athletes came up. And so I went back. I was like, okay, women in quotes, women famous with LD. Again, only lists of men in sports or in acting. And it kind of got me thinking, there aren't these role models. I don't have these role models either in famous people or really in my life. And so we wanted to create this panel to talk about this topic. So it's kind of how this whole thing came together. But it also got me thinking, my whole life, I have wanted role models to look up to who are women with LD, and not just the famous people, but I wanted to see regular people doing things that were related to the areas that I struggled with, who were succeeding. I wanted to see LD women who were teachers, bankers, authors, scientists. I wanted to see these people succeeding. I wanted to meet these people. I didn't just want them to be these famous people on my computer. And honestly, this is something I still look for today. And as a researcher now, when I find out about someone in academia who's a researcher and has an LD, I get giddy. I get so excited to know that I'm not alone, to know that there's other people in this area who are doing this and thriving in academic settings. I will like think about, oh, I wish I could just email them and talk to them about what their experience are, but I usually don't because I think that would be weird. And I worried how that would come across. But we really need to get girls who are learning disabled these role models and who can show them who are succeeding in all areas of life. And I'm really passionate about that now, because I didn't have those role models, being that role model for the next generation of LD women.
Yeah, I mean, I went through a very similar experience as Rochelle growing up. I mean, we were given a list of men. You got Thomas Edison, Walt Disney, Anderson Cooper. Like, that's it. And well, now I could name like 2 actresses who are dyslexic. You know, I don't think that would have been very meaningful for me growing up because I never wanted to be an actress. I'm not good at acting. So for me personally, the mentors that I found were in my own family. You know, my grandmother was the one who pushed for me to go to an LD friendly school when my parents were hesitant. My mother was the one who's always told me that, like, own your disability, you know, be proud of it, be an activist. Don't let people just think that you're dumb or lazy, explain. And you have to speak up for yourself because that's the only way things are going to get better for us. So that's been really meaningful in my life.
So as I've gotten older and, learn more about LD, I've gotten the chance to meet, peers, female peers that also have various learning disabilities. And I've been able to create close friendships with them. And while it's not a traditional mentorship, it is a mentorship in that we build up each other and, encourage each other during the hard times and celebrate each other during the good times. And I think having, those relationships has been really meaningful and helps me remember that, it's not just me, it's there's, people like me out there that go through the same things that I go through.
That's like so amazing. Yeah, it truly like makes a difference to have those mentors in your life. And I don't think people realize like the true impact you can have by just being there for somebody and like through tough times. In high school, I completely hid my disabilities. I was deeply ashamed of them. I didn't tell anybody. And I was in my chorus class and I met my chorus teacher, this lady who wore these colorful tie-dye dresses, who was a musical genius, who taught me about so much about classical music, rock music. She was all over the place. She walked around the room. She was spaced out. She was emotional. She spoke for what she wanted, passionate about the things she cared about and the people she loved. And she also was not ashamed to say that she had ADHD, and we could all tell she did too. And just seeing that in my life, I think it saved me because she was the first person I told, and she could tell I had it. They're singing a chorus song and she could just see my eyes darting everywhere. She was like, "You have ADHD, don't you?" I said, "Yes, I do. How did you know?" And she started laughing and it was like our little secret. And she was like, "Congratulations." And that was the first time anybody ever was happy for me for having it. And it wasn't like a burden, like, oh, I'm so sorry. She was, because I think she recognized that having those disabilities is who you are, it's your identity. And when someone is ashamed of that part of your identity, it really brings you down. So I think she definitely saved me and preserved my confidence. So thank you for that.
Yeah, similar to everyone else, growing up, I didn't really have any LD mentors. I knew a few actresses and other celebrities, but just no regular successful LD people who had dreams that were similar to my own, who I could look up to. And I really want to see LD women mentors who are on their honor rolls in college and go to law school and in every single career type. And the issue is people don't really tend to talk publicly about their learning disabilities, but when we don't talk openly about our LDs, then no one knows. And younger women with LDs don't have examples of women who don't let their learning disabilities limit them. And especially when you're younger, it's easy to feel like no one can relate to your struggles or what you're feeling and going through. And you might think you're never going to be able to become as successful. And it's so important to have these mentors and role models and realize so many people have had the same struggles, felt the same exact way as you before. They hated doing their math homework or whatever you're currently struggling with, especially when you're younger at school and you don't think that there's any way you're going to be able to get through this. And it's so important when you see people who have done the things that you want to do in your future, it just feels like all the doors are open to you. And it's really important because no matter how successful you become and how many coping skills you learn, your learning disability is always going to be part of who you are. My dyslexia is never going to be cured. And it's just always going to be a huge part of my identity. And so I think we really need more women to own that part of their identity and be proud of the fact that their brains think differently so that we can start a new generation of women who don't feel limited by their learning disability, and that they have examples of people in every single field in any career path that they're interested in, that they have examples of women who did the same things that they want to do and that they can achieve their dreams no matter what their dreams are.
So thank you all for sharing your experiences of what your experience has been being a woman with LD. And thank you all for tuning in on us talking about this for Women's History Month. To end, could each of you leave us with a statement of what you would like to leave people thinking about?
I hope for the future that we live in a world where LD women and girls no longer have to feel alone.
I am excited to eventually be able to evaluate and diagnose the next generation of strong young LD women.
I want to create a world where LD girls feel understood and confident in their identity as LD women.
I want to increase representation for people with learning disabilities and women so they can grow up knowing what they want to do.
I want everyone to become proud of their LD and just see how amazing it is that you think differently and that it's actually an advantage that you have a creative mind and can come to unique solutions.
Well, thank you all for talking on your experiences of being LD women. And for all the LD girls and women out there, know that we support you in all of your dreams and aspirations, and you're going to do great. Thank you all.